let's start with Nick Castellanos and what happened with that whole situation. Do you think that he is going to be a good fit in that clubhouse? We've given our opinion. We think he will be. What do you think?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, first and foremost. And I certainly wasn't going to bring up that Manny Machado is a Danny Lozano client.
Yes, apologies.
So, yeah, I was not.
Man.
I was just going to bite my tongue on that and certainly keep my opinions about Indiana football to myself for now.
Hey,
yeah, I do think he's a good fit. I do.
Darren, do you think that Indiana? Sorry, before we dig in,
yeah.
do you think that Indiana really hacked into the code so they knew all the plays of the other team? The first 15 plays they scripted them, because that was a thing for a while.
This is a reach.
Trisha.
You are just so
Trisha.
jealous is taking you. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a college basketball guy myself. I went to St. John's.
Like Florida?
I know a thing or two about faded glory, like Indiana, right? Like St. John's used to be a really good basketball program, so I feel like there's a little bit of a kindred spirit ship to that. So. I'm just glad that my alma mater is back and respectable with Rick Pitino. So that's all I have to say. I didn't go to a college football school.
Never heard that sentence before. Respectable.
hey, well, we're back and rolling. Come on, even
respectable with Rick Pitino. That's an interesting take.
Absolutely. Of course.
Right,
you kidding me? That man's a legend.
Good.
Third all time. I mean, that's third all time on the all-time wins list this past weekend against Providence. So never mind that little brawl thing that happened in the stands at Providence.
Nobody saw
anything else, really. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyhow, Nick Castellanos. Yeah, why not? I mean, why not have him here? We've gone through some interesting characters in San Diego, led by Manny Machado, who he himself is an interesting cat, and he's a South Florida guy. He's got a little bit of that Miami 305 swag to him, and this is his guy from South Florida, so why not bring him into the mix? Certainly, we've had some interesting dudes roll through this clubhouse, and now he is added to the list. So it didn't take much time. It certainly seemed like it was something that was done before it was even announced. There was rumors around the Padres that this was going to happen. So I think it'll work, especially if the price is right, and it sounds like it is. It's not a massive investment from the Padres standpoint financially, so why not give it a run here and see what you can get out of this guy? Add him into the mix and let it go.
What do you need to see from Nick Castellanos? I'm not even talking about the clubhouse presence. Like, I think all that stuff is just totally blown out of proportion over not a single instance, but like just what was going on in Philly. To me, it has to work out, because if he doesn't hit for, and I'm going to have you fill in the blank, X amount of time, how soon does Nick Castellanos get shipped out and they go to the next guy at first base or next guy at DH? Because that's how it's going to work out. He's either going to be awesome and he's going to keep the position, or he's going to stink and they're going to get rid of him.
Right, 100%, especially based on the financial commitment of $800,000 or a little bit less then. So, yeah, I think that's exactly it. And you know this because of recent history. You know this because of Jason Hayward. You know this because of different players that have rolled through here that A.J. Preller has placed a bet on. A.J.'s kind of like buying scratch-off tickets, when you go to the local market. And sometimes those scratch-off tickets are not worth anything. You spend $1 or $2 or $5. Sometimes you scratch off the $20, the $50, the $100. He had that a couple of years ago with Jurickson Profar, right? That was one that really resulted in a productive player who contributed, who was a great clubhouse presence. Everything worked. People were sad that Jurickson Profar didn't re-sign with the Padres, even though people understood the economics. Other guys like Jason Hayward, as I mentioned, Connor Joe last year, just to name a few, Yuli Gurriel. These are players that it didn't work. So you just move on. You move on quickly, and I think that will happen with Castellanos. But in terms of what you're looking for here, you're looking for something that the Padres didn't have last year, which is power, slug. Even in a down year, Castellanos provided 17 home runs for the Phillies. I know, different ballpark, but still, I think at this stage of his career, he's comparable in some ways to some of those players that I just mentioned, but he's also younger than some of those guys. So I think it's a worthwhile investment. And what he said initially, I think matters. He talked a little bit about wanting to fit in, right? Like I had the situation in the Phillies clubhouse where my role changed and maybe it wasn't communicated. That was that clubhouse. That's not this clubhouse. So they're going to figure this out together, what the role is going to be. Is it going to be DH? Is it going to be a little bit of first? They're going to work on that together. He seems open-minded to whatever it is that the coaching staff wants to put in front of him. And he also talked about being in a winning environment. He talked about the city of San Diego. He talked about how much his son loves eating tacos in the gas lamp. So he comes from a winning environment. He comes from good fan support, and that's exactly what he's going to get here. And when you say something like, hey, the team's never won a World Series, that matters to me, I want to help them try to get there, people are like, yeah, okay, cool. This is starting off on the right foot.
Statistically, the Padres didn't strike out much. They lost their first baseman who never struck out. And now they're going to possibly a new first baseman in Nick Castellanos, who does strike out. It's not historic rates, but it's a contact-driven team. Does his skill set just rely on hey, if you don't hit the ball out of the ballpark, we have a bunch of guys that already do what you do at a much lower strikeout rate. So is that really where it's at? Does he need to pop 5 homers in the month of April to be able to stay on this team?
I don't know that there's a number for it, but I also think, maybe the offensive identity is going to change a little bit from where it was last year, right? So yeah, they were contact, they didn't strike out, but they also didn't pop. They didn't hit home runs. They were 22nd in slugging. They were 28th in home runs hit, right? That's a pretty big deal. And some of that obviously is Jackson Merrill being injured. Some of that is, hey, getting a full season from Ramon Laureano. What kind of player are we going to get with Tatis this year? All these things, that we're going to talk about throughout spring training and into the regular season. But I do think when your hitting coach is on another squad now, off to the Houston Astros he goes, and your manager who called, more sacrifice bunts than anybody in baseball. Does anybody really want to lead the league in sacrifice bunts? The Padres did last year. I do think that at the end of the year, there was definitely an idea that there would be a new approach to how you were constructing your offense. So is it going to be exactly the same with a new hitting coach and a new manager? I suspect not. And some of that is going to come internally, and some of that obviously is going to come from the outside. But it's pretty much been since the end of last season. Like they've talked about adding slug to this lineup. And, that's a combination, as I said, of guys that are going to come back, who you're going to rely on. And it's also now bringing in people like Castellanos or Andujar. So I think that they are going to give up on certain things that made them successful over the last couple of years in an attempt to add things that they felt like they were deficient at, and that they resulted in them getting knocked out by the Cubs last year.
All right, let's talk about what just happened with AJ Preller and the Padres. They have agreed to a contract extension. Apparently, when Manny Machado speaks, people immediately listen, right? Because isn't that how it went, right?
Yeah.
Machado was lobbying for him. What was it, just yesterday? Asking why they hadn't signed him to an extension yet. And look, they delivered. Your thoughts on that, Darren?
I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I mean, maybe Manny's going to be the next owner of the Padres, right? The team is for sale. So, maybe what Manny's saying here is this is the way I want things to operate, and it's Manny's team now. I think that there were some questions about the future of the franchise in terms of what it's going to look like after a sale. Team is for sale. It's expected to be sold here potentially in the next couple of months. So from that standpoint, AJ Preller, I think, is 100% committed to the city. I think he wants to finish what he started here. I do feel like there is a real connection, to him. I think he takes it seriously when he talks about honoring Peter Seiler, the late owner's legacy. I think that really isn't just something that you say. It's not just a hashtag for AJ Preller. I think he really means that. So I think he does want to see this through. And I think that's a good thing. I wasn't always confident that this was going to happen towards the tail end of last year. You thought maybe, if things didn't work out, was there going to be an opportunity to just say, let's just shake this thing up and change things, because we've given it as far a rope as we could possibly give it. Preller has been the GM for 4 playoff appearances in 6 years. That's not been done in this franchise's history. This franchise doesn't have great history. But it's not been done. It's been to the NLCS one time. And I think he wants to finish the job. I thought that this was the right pathway for the Padres to take. I think the players agree. I think that, this is even though we talk about the lack of consistency in the manager's office, I think Preller is, certainly somebody who Padre fans have come to like. And I think he's been a big part of what the success of the San Diego Padres is from a business standpoint. This club is probably going to fetch north of $2 billion, when it is that it's eventually sold. And I'm not saying that's all directly related to the president of baseball operations and general manager, but I think he's played a role in that. There's a lot of Machado jerseys in this city. There's a lot of Tatis jerseys in this city. So, there's a lot of people who wear, oddly enough, AJ Preller t-shirts and AJ we trust, right? So I think he has become an important figure here. If it had run its course and the next owner decides this isn't what he wants to continue with, then fine, so be it. But I think it's a good day for the Padres. I think it's the right decision. And, I think he's a guy, even if the purse strings have been closed just a little bit here over the last couple of years. I mean, we're talking about, being able to get Castellanos in here, some of the starting pitching that they've been able to get in here. He can build a farm system. He can use that farm system as trade capital if he doesn't have money to go out there and spend on free agents like he did last year at the deadline and bring in Mason Miller. So, I think this is a good day for the Padres, and it certainly seems like a lot of the players, based on their reaction, believe the same.
Why does Foul Territory not have a shirt that says "In AJ We Trust"? That's what I want to know. I mean, every Padre fan should have it. They would buy it, and we could sell it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why we don't have
I will
that
get our best people on that.
On Foul Territory.
I mean, if not for you,
shop.com and friarterritory.com. We can sell the crap out of them shirts.
I mean, of course, you, Hinch, Preller, right? I mean, there's enough. Yeah. I mean, this could serve multiple locations in multiple markets.
We were this close, by the way, to having me, Preller, and Hinch on at the same time. But Preller walked away instead of coming over. We had Hinch on, Preller walked by, and I'm like, we could set a world record for AJ's on television at the same time.
Now, you're Andrew John, is that right?
Anthony John.
Anthony, I'm sorry. He's Arthur John, I believe. So I don't know what Hinch is off the top of my head. But yeah, that would have been, that'd be solid. I think that's good marketing right there. Let's get the Foul Territory people on it.
True.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask about Arthur John here. One last question. You know how many managers, because maybe national fans don't know how many managers he's been through. You kind of glazed over it a little bit. Do you know the number? What Craig Stammen is for AJ Preller's reign as general manager?
Are we talking about full-time managers or interim managers? How would you like to break this down?
I'm going to count Rod Barajas' 1-7 record as one of the X amount of managers.
Do we give Dave Roberts for no. 1 or 2 games back in 2015? Do we give him run? I can rattle them off. He inherited Buddy Black, who's back in the organization. Dave Roberts then was an interim for a day or two. Pat Murphy finished the 2015 season. 2016 was Andy Green. That took us till the end of 2019 when Rod Barajas took over for 8 games. Then in 2020, it was Jace Tingler. Tingler went through 20 and 21. Then came in Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin 2 seasons. Mike Schilt 2 seasons. And now Craig Stammen.
9.
Get it right?
9 for everybody who was not watching me count with my fingers because I can't count that high.
It's a lot.
General manager that goes through that many managers has clearly built a product on the field. But in AJ We Trust shirts, shouldn't that be a shirt that is in our organization we trust, and maybe AJ's taking a little bit too much of the front line or whatever it is, and is he the one that could be getting in the way for them to truly take that next step? Because this roster, nobody denies this roster. There's holes in every roster, but he's built this roster. Should he get out of the way? Should he have somebody that says, AJ, stop for 1 second, we got this?
I think it's fair. I do. I think that's fair to wonder when you've burned through a manager who's a 3-time manager of the year, another manager who walks away. I mean, back-to-back managers have just walked away from this job, right? I mean, what is that telling us here? That Bob Melvin decided, I've had enough, I'm getting out of here. Mike Schultz, get me back into the minor leagues. I think this has run its course. Maybe those are situations that are independent to themselves. Maybe there's some connective tissue there. I think everyone is sort of different, right? You inherit Buddy Black, and it always felt like Buddy on a expiring contract was probably not going to make it unless that 2015 season was something special, and it wasn't heading in the right direction. Andy Green was sort of here for development. I don't know that they looked at Andy Green as somebody who, they really thought, by the way, the only manager under AJ Preller to get an extension, oddly enough. So the Tingler thing, the clubhouse in 2021 kind of went south on him. And you put the organization in a funky place where I think, a decision was made that maybe Preller got a little outranked on. Then you bring in somebody like Melvin, he leaves. So I think they're all a bit different, but I also think it's fair to say, what is the problem here? Why can you not, every time you introduce somebody at one of these press conferences, you claim that, you want this guy to be the manager for the next 10 years. And then 2 years later, we're doing the same thing over again. I think that there's been plenty of reporting on some of AJ Preller, what's been described as some micromanaging. The way he wants things done seems very unique, that, he is pretty hands-on in certain drills and things and ways that he wants the club to operate. So it's not for everybody. It is definitely not for everybody. These managers, one after another, will tell you stories about standing in their cul-de-sacs at 2 a.m, taking phone calls from AJ Preller about this, that, the other thing. Like, he operates and marches to the beat of a totally different drum. So I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to work with Craig Stammen, a guy who's never done it before, a guy who's been a career relief pitcher. I mean, is this finally the secret sauce that he needs for somebody that he has alignment with? I'm curious to see what that looks like. Seems to at least pass the eye test early on, Craig Stammen, in terms of standing up there, looking comfortable at the podium, et cetera. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's been a valid criticism of it. Why is it that you burn through all of these guys? What is it about working with you that has these guys literally quitting these jobs? What is that? But for the most part, I think that the fans just enjoy the energy. They enjoy the buzz, right? Like he's an action guy. Things happen. Think about even what's happened here over the last couple of days, whether it's been Castellanos or Canning or Marquez. Like, he's an action guy. And like, we all rely on that in the media because it gives us plenty of juice and he provides that sizzle. So, there's also some steak that goes with the sizzle as well. But I think it's a fair criticism. Like, what happens here? Why do these guys keep doing it? And at what point do you run out of, well, I've got the next candidate that I think I'm going to be in perfect alignment with, because we haven't quite hit that one yet.
Never.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's just a strategy of like, let's just keep churning it over and see what we can get out of these guys for a couple of years. I don't know that I fully understand it. When I came here, Bruce Bochy was the manager, and still the best manager that I've covered. So I prefer the consistency. AJ claims that as well, but the actions every other year tell us a different story.
Perhaps it's the 2 a.m. cul-de-sac conversations. We're only human. We can only take so many of those. Yeah. All right. You touched on it briefly earlier, but what is the update on the sale process? We know that it's supposed to come to a conclusion here over the next few months.
So John Seidler, who's the acting chairman, spoke today at the Peoria Sports Complex, where the Padres spring training site is located, and said some very vague commentary. Hey, we have interest. There's been some reports, I'm sure, that have been discussed here and elsewhere about some of the names, whether that's, names that have been associated more with European soccer, or whether that's Joe Lacob from the Golden State Warriors. These are the names that have been reported on. I suspect there's probably one or two that we haven't heard of, but there's been some local reporting about prospective potential owners getting tours of Petco Park. Walking around, taking a peek, seeing what's what. How far down the road anybody's gone in terms of what do the finances look? Has anybody taken this further enough or far enough that they've taken a peek at the Padres books? Seems unclear at this point, but based on what Rob Manfred said earlier this week or late last week, there's interest. And around here, the people that are in these circles, they tell you, like, the interest is real. Like, there's real, this isn't just trying to gin up a little bit of activity or some rumors to get people to jump in. It sounds like, those that are, I don't operate in these billionaire spaces, but those that are, even if they're out there on the fringes, tell you that the interest is real, and it sounds like something could be, sooner rather than later. When this first was announced, I thought this was going to be like a long, drawn out process, potentially after the CBA, just to make sure you knew. But it sounds like there's a little bit of an urgency, I suppose, on behalf of the Seidler family, whether that's lawsuit related, whether that's just like, hey, listen, like, this isn't what we signed up for. This is what our brother did, and we're sort of just holding this down in the interim. But it does sound like most people who are involved in current capacity as ownership wants to get going here and move this forward and hopefully leave the Padres in a good situation, which is where they were under the late great Peter Seidler.
Darren, you mentioned the money and the income. I just want to know, I think the Padres, they're with MLB, I know that, but I think they're only broadcasting 2 spring training games, I think. And are the fans okay with that? Because I think the Padres are one of the teams that used to do like almost every spring training game. And now I think they're only doing 2 the entire spring. Is this the new way of TV under MLB? And are Padre fans okay with only seeing possibly 2 of their spring training games?
No, and I think the television has been, kind of a pain in the ass subject for a lot of people because, what happened, they were part of the Bally's group that blew up and they went from making $60 million a deal, which, $60 million a year, which is not a ton compared to some of the, top markets, right? Chicago, LA, et cetera. But now they went to one of the worst deals in all of Major League Baseball. And it's sort of fuzzy, what this is looking like under Major League Baseball's operation. They're sort of a canary in the coal mine type. No, I think that overall it's been frustrating for somebody like yours truly. I mean, I plop down $100 a year just so I know where I can get it. I can find it. I can stream it through the MLB app. But I think people would like to know that this team is going to end up in a situation here where it's not lagging so far behind everybody else financially. I don't know how many games they're putting on their stream for spring training. I know on the radio side, there's going to be some sort of stream or radio broadcast for almost all of them. But in terms of being able to watch them, seems like that's been a little bit complicated. And now it's MLB and it's ESPN. And what does that mean for fans here? I feel like the CEO of this team goes on the radio on a pretty regular basis and has to explain, like, hey, this is what the deal is with this. We all understand, right? Even us, by nature of being here and streaming and baseball the way it should be covered, streaming. Myself, after 20 years of doing local radio, those days are kind of in the past. But I do think it's just not been clear what it is that's happening with the Padres and. What does that mean for the product on the field? Because so much of your revenue is tied into this and into your local television revenue, and you're not getting that. And you were getting that. And what is baseball doing to make the situation a little bit better? And then B, there's just a ton of confusion out there about how these games, what channel are they on? If I have DirecTV or if I have this platform or if I have that one, I subscribed to YouTube TV a couple of years ago because I was watching the World Series and then like Joe Buck kept telling me or get YouTube TV. And I had the Padres and then I didn't, from one year to the next. And every year it's like you have to go through this roadmap trying to figure out how it is that you're going to get the baseball game. So it has been a real point of concern for the Padres. And recently the CEO has to just say baseball's in charge. That's a question for MLB. Well, good luck getting any answers there. Or any answers that are satisfactory. Like we all can live with the fact that how we consume content, games is changing. We all can live with that. But there just hasn't been like any clarity exactly. Like, I don't want to be told that I have to change everything. I don't want to have to tell my wife that she's got to like lose her whole library on YouTube TV so we can switch to another platform so that we can watch the Padres. And I'm not alone in that. So, it's been frustrating over the last couple of years since the Bally implosion. And it just feels like the Padres have been one of those teams that's been, at the front of, well, baseball is going to take care of this now. And nobody feels like we're in a better situation today than we were 3 years ago.